Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe. When you're getting a temporary restraining order, you're asking the judge to already take preemptive measures on the merit of what you're filing. You're asking the judge to say, listen, I know that you ordinarily don't decide who wins or loses, but I want you to look at this for real. Do you think I have a good chance of winning? And if the judge looks at it and the judge is like, ooh, there's a pretty good chance of you succeeding on the merits. And there's two parts to this. It's not just one. It's not just that you'll win. And if the court doesn't take preemptive action to block, to enjoin the actions of the defendants in the case, then the plaintiffs will suffer irreparable harm that cannot be remedied in any other course after a trial. So for a TRO to be granted, that's two different things that have to be met. There's a very, very, very high threshold. It's very rare to meet these. That's why it was so exceptional when it was met in some of the other cases. So the fact that it got turned down here doesn't speak at all to like, well, does that mean that this whole case is bullshit, or that they're never going to succeed, or that they can't even prove any harm? No. It's that they couldn't prove irreparable harm would occur if the judge didn't, in a preliminary fashion, block or enjoin, meaning to stop the defendants from doing some action. That's what this means. So when you say headlines like this, this is written in a antagonizing manner. It's not technically true, right? I think she had issue with how broad of restrictions they wanted, and they weren't specific about what harms or something. Sure, and that could be an issue. You're, what am I thinking? I'm thinking the term narrowly tailored, but that has to do with standard of review cases. It wouldn't be, but I don't know if I don't want to use the phrase narrowly tailored because that implies something else, I think. But what you're asking for has to be very limited in terms of like, these are the exact things that, like, you couldn't enjoin them from doing everything, right? Like I want to TRO against this guy for breathing because I think that he might like be mean to me or whatever. Like you have to be quite specific, I think. Destiny, I don't know. I feel like the threshold for this should be met when some random guy who's not in any official position is firing employees of the government. No. Are you going to rehire every single one of them after? Well, it depends on what they were asking for here. Keep in mind that you're in like a weird world too legally where, because Trump has actually been a little bit more careful in talking about this, Doge isn't actually firing anybody. It's Trump that's firing them with Doge's recommendation. Now, even that's not technically legal, but what could happen is Doge, like this would be legal. Doge makes a recommendation to the president. The president makes that recommendation to his executive head or his department head, and then the head carries out those firings. That would technically be a legal process. Now, is that actually happening? In some cases, it doesn't seem to be the case. That's why you've got people who are resigning and stuff. But in other cases, it could be the case. Yeah, if that makes sense. Does lack of proven harm potentially mean that there hasn't been tangible harm yet to be seen? No. For a TRO, it's not just harm. It's irreparable harm, meaning I can't even think of an example. Let's say somebody is suing somebody and a person is like mining stone out of a quarry and they're taking like 100 blocks of stone a day and the quarry is like 1 billion blocks. Like maybe a judge doesn't do a TRO here because the judge is like, listen, you're probably going to win this case and we do even agree that they're harming you, but like if you win, you can just ask for it all back. It's not a big deal, right? It's not like we have to come in and block them beforehand. You know, it has to be irreparable harm for a TRO, I believe. Do you think there's a world where the courts are just too slow to deal with this full muzzle velocity attempt to break and take over our government? So, oh man, these are two things. I don't know what has to happen or who you guys have to email, but I need people to talk about these two things. I need these to be more proliferated in the media. The first is my checks and balances take, that the checks and balances don't work when the executive doesn't want to play ball. There are no checks and balances at that point. Just to be clear, checks and balances are still assuming everybody's playing by the rules, number one. The second take is, does anybody have a link to the interview on, was it the BBC with the ICJ ex-president head? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It was this. Oh my God, is this not going to be available in my, okay, give me a minute. Because now I'm going to listen for a second.
On that basis, it's
of every order, every judgment, jointly,
Can
several
you?
times.
Right, but you have said
to access or
elements of humanity coming to the fore, the resources available.
Writing in separate opinions, and that's representative of the world.
And you've acknowledged that far too many of the judges come from the. Maybe now is time to consider whether you think the court is actually fit for purpose. We've already referred to the slowness of the way in which important cases processed through the court can take many, many years to get a decision. I believe right now there are at least.
Okay. I want you to listen to what she says here. When she's talking about the internet, so this is the ex-president, Joan Donoghue of the Court of Justice, the International Court of Justice, when they were reviewing the initial case that was filed by South Africa against the state of Israel, having to do with the violation of their treaty to of the, I should have the exact name of this. It's the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Okay, she was the president. It's very, very, very important to understand what the job of a court is. Okay, and people again aren't understanding this, and they're using this right now to hope that the courts will save us. But I think this is something people need to keep in mind. Okay, just listen to how she explains the function of the court. So coming into this, people are thinking like, oh my God, if South Africa files a suit against Israel, we can save the Palestinians. That's like the worldwide thought, okay?
Place in Srebrenica is hugely significant internationally. I don't have any doubt about that.
You've just retired from the court. Maybe it's time to consider whether you think the court is actually fit for purpose. We've already referred to the slowness of the way in which important cases processed through the court can take many, many years to get a decision. I believe right now there are at least 20 cases grinding through the court. One of them dates back to the 1990s. But there are other questions too about the diversity of the judges on the court. There are 12 men and 3 women at the moment. You've acknowledged that far too many of the judges come from the white developed world, not from the global south. Is it fit for purpose?
I think it is. The members of the court are selected in a manner that is representative of the world. There are only 15 of us, so it won't be fully representative ever, but they're elected to have diverse views.
Too about the diversity of
hugely significant. It's important to remember that the Convention does not just impose on a state an obligation. Well, you just bear in mind that, first of all,
terms of
and 3 prior cases
okay, hold on.
2 cases brought to the court.
Let her explain. Okay.
To the court in the context of the former Yugoslavia.
I'm aware of Serbia and Croatia being examined before the court in terms of, but as I understand it, the court did not rule that they were guilty as states of. It certainly said that they took actions which allowed to happen, which is obviously a very different thing. But I come back to my point that as states, no state, as far as I'm aware, has actually been, if one can use the term, found guilty by the ICJ of.
Well, you just bear in mind that, first of all, the court did decide that Serbia had breached obligations under the Convention, its obligation to prevent the in Srebrenica. And that goes to a point.
Wasn't found responsible of it.
Right, but it's important to remember that the Convention does not just impose on a state an obligation, don't commit. In fact, you don't even see that in the text of the Convention. The obligations of a state go fundamentally to preventing and punishing, and also there are obligations in respect of the incitement of. So all of those kinds of claims on the merits can be looked at in a case, and a finding that that a state failed to prevent accidents that took place, as those that took place in Srebrenica, is hugely significant internationally. I don't have any doubt.
Why is that? I mean, now you're considering Israel, but
in 3 prior cases, inbox the case of Yugoslavia.
I'm aware. The
Hamas is not a state.
Okay, never mind. So I need to go listen to this and find out if they want later. I don't know about this. Okay. She has a really good explanation here that more people needed to understand internationally when it came to the ICJ in Israel, and when people are talking about domestic cases right now in the United States of America, okay? Courts are not meant to save you. Courts are not meant to save you. That's what the executive is for, okay? If somebody's trying to break in your house, you do not call the court to help you, all right? If somebody is stealing from you, you don't call the court to keep them from stealing from you. If somebody's going to come and kill you, you don't call the court. You might call the court to try to get like a temporary restraining order, which is an exceptional thing, but it's ultimately the executive that comes to save you. Right now, people in the United States of America, they're looking for the courts to save us from the overreach of the executive. But the issue is that a court is just there to make you whole, generally, after somebody's already done a bad thing. That's why a temporary restraining order, which you get into, you can file for and hopefully get a preliminary injunction. These are exceptional things. These aren't the norm. These are exceptional. Preliminary injunctions, temporary restraining orders, and even stays are, maybe not as much to say, but the TROs and the preliminary injunctions, these are exceptional measures that a court is taking against an alleged offender, against an alleged, not alleged, a defendant. So people that are looking for the courts to stop the executive from doing all their bad things, that's scary because it's an improper, in my opinion, it's an improper desire or hope to utilize the court in an active, preventative manner when that's not really what courts are designed to do. So people are going to get mad that maybe the courts aren't moving fast enough. Like they're trying to get expedited on a preliminary injunction. It'll always be like an expedited hearing record, I think, because they want to get those done real quick. But like people might be mad that the courts aren't fast enough. The courts aren't serious. The courts can't really save you. That's not even really their job. That's just a thing to keep in mind. And I wish more people would remember this. The court can't save you, and checks and balances only exist insofar as everybody's willing to play by the rules. Can U.S. politics rebound without an unhinged arc from the left, or restore order, or is civility politics dead? I've seen more left-centric conspiracies, but I can't tell if it's just Russia astroturfing. It's probably both, but there is a serious problem right now in the United States and how many people are supporting the actions right now of the Conservative Party. So who is the one that should be doing the saving then? I mean, what should be happening is the executive should never act in a manner where they think they're the sole determiners of law. That's what should be happening. But if the executive decides that they can't do that, or they don't want to do that, then ideally, at the very least, you force them to be more open about it, meaning they lose all support from Congress. But the problem right now is that we don't just have this is the problem too. We don't just have an unhinged executive, and we don't just have an unhinged Congress, and by Congress I mean Republicans. We have an unhinged Republican voter base, because if Congress wanted, like, this would be a really easy thing. Let's assume that Trump and his admin, let's say that Trump and the Trump administration, those are the only crazy people. If that was the case, oh, that's easy. Then we impeach him in Congress. Boom. Let's say that we impeach him. Oh, but he doesn't leave. Okay. Then the military goes and removes him. Whatever. That's easy at that point. If all of Congress and the American people are supporting Congress and they impeach Trump and Trump doesn't leave office, then it. Then the military goes in or whatever. But the issue is that the Republicans in Congress aren't moving to do that because the American people seem to be supporting Trump still. So the people keep asking sometimes, this is actually a criticism I gave, I think multiple years ago. People keep saying, how do we change the system right now? Because the system seems to be broken. And I've said this over and over again, the system's not broken. It's just accurately representing the will of the American people. And the will of the American people right now, prior to this, was very divided. And now it's like authoritarian, right? People always assume, and I guess we're seeing it more and more in the book that we're reading for the rise and coming of the Third Reich, the first part of the trilogy. The issue is that if half your country wants an authoritarian leader, there's no system that you can install. There's no system that you can design to prevent that from happening, you know? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the founders intended for Congress to go against the will of the people in times like this. I think that was the original intention of the Electoral College, to provide a safeguard against an incompetent leader being voted in. Nah, the Electoral College has nothing to do with Congress. I only read like 26 of the Federalist Papers. Maybe we'll go back to reading more of them. But I don't know if Congress ever is supposed to go against the will of the people. You could argue that electors, when they vote for president, were supposed to be doing it in a different manner, but we're past that. That's not our issue right now. Why does the executive get the power of the veto? Does it not imply the ultimate legislative role? It's just to create a lot of gridlock. It's just to ensure that if legislation passed in our system, that there is a huge consent of the people in all ways for it to pass, basically. Right. Check out Damac Properties and Holdings and their relationship with Trump. Oh, I saw that. I don't know if I care.